You can win, Sonic! You always do!
Hey everybody, just a quick preface and then we'll get straight into the Sonic Generations-ness. I just want to discuss Sonic Generations. I'm not going to fully review it. I feel like there's more to say about Sonic and very specific details about Sonic Generations than just reviewing the whole damn thing. So I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to talk about 2D Sonic. I want to talk about sort of the future of 3D Sonic games. Not that there won't be 2D Sonic games, I'm sure that all the handheld ones are still going to be that way. But today, I want to focus on the 3D. So, please, with that in mind, do enjoy the rest of this video. I'm sure you'll laugh at least once, and if you don't, perhaps you are a bad person.
Sonic Generations is a celebration of the last 2 decades of Sonic games. From the myriad of Sonic platformers in existence, 9 have levels featured in Generations, and 6 have bosses. Now, a Sonic with every ability from each of those games would probably go insane and murder all his friends in a terrifying display of mutant abilities. So, instead of that goofy-ass idea, Generations has a standard bevy of ability offerings including a boost gauge, lock-on homing attack, ground stomp, and ring dash. The levels in Generations have been retooled slightly to ensure that they'll be playable in the game's engine. So don't worry, you won't need to hog out and rooftop run. With Generations' feature suite and thick, sexy layer of polish, we're getting more than just a museum of nostalgia. We're getting an amazing Sonic game of its very own.
So it's more like a museum where the floor has like a conveyor belt on it and it's super fast. And then like you get on it and you're like zoom, but then like you see a picture and you want to stop and you slow down and you're like, oh wow, that's quite interesting. And the museum tour guide looks at you and goes, you're too slow.
Now, this amazing Sonic game with its sexy polish layer has a lot going for it, but there's a very specific thing it does incredibly well: the camera. The camera in a 3D platforming game is like the final boss during game development. If you can't beat it, the whole thing is fucked. Thankfully, the camera in Generations does a fantastic job of highlighting the important bits and foreshadowing upcoming obstacles as they approach. The sense of speed in a Sonic game goes hand in hand with how well they handle the camera. The wide pan in a broad segment with lots of enemies and platforms is suited well to Sonic having to maneuver his way through the level, whereas the dynamic camera during those super fast segments shifts and moves smoothly and smartly, rarely requiring you to slow down.
So we've got the camera and we've got the sense of speed. So we take those two things and they work really, really well together, and now we've got a good Sonic game. But we have to examine sort of why that is exactly. What about Sonic mechanically makes that happen? So, hold on to your pencils, kids. It's about to get really fucking educational up in this.
Sonic Generations has arguably quite clear gameplay systems behind most of its level design, along with the way you control Sonic. It took some deliberating, and there's definitely some exceptions, but I think I've distilled Sonic's gameplay into 2 ideas spread over 3 settings. However, due to the educational nature of this information, I brought in Professor Sandwich here to explain in ways I couldn't possibly accomplish. Why, hello there! It's good to be back on the show! Today I'm going to go over some important observations regarding the rules of a Sonic the Hedgehog game, specifically in Generations and 3D Sonic levels. Remember, there are always exceptions to the rule, so try not to be a bummer about it. Sonic's gameplay is built on a mix of speed and platforming. The flow of a level must transition from platforming to speed smoothly and gradually. Those moments when you're running at full speed and slam straight into a wall? Well, those are no good. Too much shit in the way while running at top speed, as well as long segments of just running, are equally terrible. Balance is everything in his world. Sonic's world, that is. Rolling around at the speed of sound can be distracting, so you'd be forgiven for missing all the nifty side paths in a Sonic game. However, these hidden gems, or perhaps emeralds, are a key component of most Sonic games. Generations uses artful camera work to hint at upcoming paths so you'll catch them in time, or at least remember them for later. Quite helpful, wouldn't you say? There are primarily 3 settings in modern Sonic games: the track, the field, and the platform. The field is Sonic's most common location, and it's called as such because Sonic has so much room to, well, frolic in it. The track is then narrow and directed to fields wide and free, and it's also the fastest setting, by far. The final setting, platform, is more general and simply applies to slower paced platforming segments. These often have lots of enemies for Sonic to face. Trounce those bad guys and walk off, 7 rings in hand. More or less 7, however many you have at the time. These three main components of Sonic gameplay are rather well implemented here in Sonic Generations. Sure, some levels may not be your favorite, but if you truly open up your heart, I think you can learn to accept that. Regardless, we're talking about theory here, and in theory, if Sonic games can continue to perform as Generations has, the franchise is likely to continue for generations. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for listening to my guide, and I hope you'll tune in next time when we discuss something completely different.
Alright, so that's the baseline Sonic gameplay. That's what we're here to play a Sonic game for. Now, there of course are various other unique ideas, mechanics, exceptions, etc. that make a game more interesting, and there's some of the things that sort of grab our attention, such as playing as multiple characters in a game, the Sonic game that is, or, you know, space alien stuff. However, that's not necessarily going to save a game, though it will make it better if it's good. So let's look at why that is.
Sonic, for all his massive fanbase and mostly success, is about as consistent as the physics engine in Sonic 06. Not to say it's consistently bad, but more so sometimes a Sonic game is just a total miss. Stop. We've discussed Sonic Generations gameplay to death, but the theme and story are going to require some context.
Yeah, some context.
Right, some of that. There's sort of a spectrum regarding Sonic and telling a story. Sonic Adventure 2 and 06 are far too serious, and they take themselves too seriously.
Otherwise,
Sonic Colors and Generations are overtly over the top and rarely attempt serious drama.
Where'd it go?
Specifically speaking, Sonic Adventure 2 has a rather dark plot, especially with regards to Shadow's history and Dr. Eggman's reasoning for trying to destroy the world this time. It's not explicitly bad, but that's not what's on the table here. More so, it doesn't feel right. Sonic Colors tossed a lot of that out the window, and Generations, well, leaves it outside. Believe it or not, Sonic Generations picks up where Sonic Colors left off, with Eggman Darth Vadering out in space. He meets this purple monster thing with affinity for clockwork bling, and imprisons entire pieces of the world along with Sonic's friends. What will happen to his friends? Will Sonic be able to stop Eggman? How did he learn to talk? But most importantly, what of the chili dog? The chili dog, no! This is a silly plot. Most of the game takes place in a hub world, and unlike Adventures and Heroes, most of the characters featured in the game aren't properly taken advantage of. The ridiculous myriad of characters Sonic has generated over time is sort of an untapped goldmine. Though slightly archetypal, there's a lot of variety and charm to choose from here. Other than that slight disappointment though, I'm alright with Generations' story. It's enough to make sense of things, but doesn't get in the way of the game, nor does it ever overstay its welcome. Beyond the story, the theming during the levels in Generations is very powerful in some places, mostly solid in others. The sense of scale on the rooftop run level as you crest the top of that giant spire, the tension of outrunning the gun truck in City Escape, the sense of height and bustle of Speed Highway, etc. All these things are well executed and make the levels in Generations memorable even if you haven't played them in their original games.
Alright, so we talked about the gameplay, we talked about the theming, and how they're both amazing, and how they're going to move the franchise forward from this point on, or even kind of from Sonic Colors on. But we haven't talked about the boss battles. They ain't so good in this game.
Boss battles are one of the most prominent nuggets of video game history, and they've had an incredible time transitioning into this generation of gaming. It's ironic thus that all of Generations' bosses are based on previous games, and yet most of them are still pretty terrible. Let's examine why. Metal Sonic's fight begins with a cutscene which accomplishes the very thing cutscenes before boss fights should do. It tells you your main method for beating the boss. This is good, this is instructive, and it makes those kind of moments when you don't really know what's gonna happen a little easier to understand. On the flip side, there's Silver. The camera suggests you're supposed to jump at him with the homing attack by dodging obstacles to catch up with him. However, you're actually supposed to jump on the debris he raises and then hit him. If you miss, guess what? You're gonna be running around for the 30 seconds dodging shit. And, you know, falling asleep. And then there's this guy, fucking Blingtown McPurple. It's one of the worst boss fights I have ever played. It's not even hard, it's just monotonous and does an absolutely awful job of conveying what you're supposed to be doing or the differences between playing as 3D Sonic and 2D Sonic. I must have rage quit the thing 10 fucking times before I finally beat the damn game.
It looks like a homing shot!
Be careful, Sonic!
It'll take more than that!
Sonic Generations gets so much right, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a bummer it kind of slips up in the boss battles area, but it only really affects your first playthrough, so it's not going to affect your whole experience as you replay the game levels in the Sonic Generations. There's also all these little challenges that you can do to sort of bring more content to the game if you want to do all those, and they're fun for the most part. Some of them are just really hard. But I've always loved a certain thing about Generations that I didn't get to talk about today, and I think that it's going to be something that persists way into the future of Sonic's franchise. And it's a little song written by a certain Crush 40 with some lyrics that kind of go like this.
What the fuck?
So I just finished watching this video from some sandwich motherfucker, and I cannot let this stand. He was talking about how he had this perfect vision for Sonic and where he should be headed, like he knows anything at all. But okay, let's start where he was correct. Sonic Generations was amazing. It was the best game I've ever played. Literally. But so much of what he said was complete shit. I mean, Sonic Adventure 2 was too serious? I mean, come on, that game was like the highest rated game of its time, and it still tops the charts on best games ever made. And really, what game of Sonic's isn't serious? Generations was serious. But no, I'm sure he's right. If two dimensions were to collide right now, I'm sure he'd just sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is a lot of fun, this is really whimsical. And what about the Sonic the Hedgehog movie? That was one of the most dramatic films I've ever seen, and it's the only film to ever have been nominated for Best Picture in the Academy Awards 2 years in a row. I just can't believe someone would have the audacity to talk about Sonic like this. I mean, just think of all the good that Sonic has done for the world. Sonic has entertained gamers for years and will continue to do so. Sonic has never and will never release a bad game. Sonic single-handedly stopped the video game crash of 1983. Sonic defeated racism. Sonic ended world hunger. Sonic taught me how to read. Sonic was the best president we've ever had. Sonic invented electricity. Sonic cut my hair. Sonic reads stories to me when I'm having trouble sleeping. Sonic was the first man on the moon. But most importantly, Sonic was in this. The single greatest thing ever created. We don't need to listen to this sandwich man and his thoughts on the future of Sonic. We need to listen to me. Hi, I'm internet sensation Brutalmoose. Some of you might not know this, but I was recently named #1 Sonic fan by Brutalmoose.com. I'm here to talk to you about something very important. For years, Sega has entertained us with great, high-quality video game entertainment, including Sonic Unleashed and Sonic the Hedgehog. And while we all trust Sonic Team to deliver the best games ever created, it's time to let them know what the fans want. It's time for Sonic R HD. We all know it's the greatest idea ever conceived, and it's time to let Sonic Team know that as well. Join me in the fight. Demand Sonic R HD. Don't be a communist.
Jesus, what a fucking asshole. Although, he is right about Sonic R. Everybody,